Is NBC from studios at Richmond Hill in capital Kingstown for the 21st day in the month of April 2021. Good morning and welcome back to the program Ein Soufriere, the morning edition. With us in studio is Prime Minister Dr. the Honourable Ralphie Gonsalves, and we're joined via the Zoom platform by lead scientist monitoring the Soufriere volcano, Professor Richard Robertson. Prime Minister Gonsalves, Professor Robertson, good morning.
Good morning to you, Dion. Good morning to Richie and all here at NBC and in St. Vincent and Grenadines at home and abroad. All our friends who are listening to us and viewing us. Morning.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm all right. I'm good.
All right. So we want to begin, as usual, Professor, by recapping the events of yesterday and speaking about today.
Yes, so activity has essentially continued in the same kind of way. That is that we are currently in pause, certainly a break from the explosive events that we had. And we're into that period where we have these long period earthquakes. The period started with them. We have had some, early on in the period, we had some rockfall type signals. And then it sort of lulled a little bit. And overnight, it's more or less the long period events have picked up again. And we're having quite a few currently. Now, these events are not, these earthquakes are proper earthquakes, but they're not going to be felt. And they, as we've said before, they're associated with movement of magma. And our working model is that you probably have either dome growth or something trying to grow at the summit there at present. We would be surprised if in the near future we have another explosion, as we've had. We've had these long periods when not very much seems to be happening at the summit, but then we have earthquakes like this, and then we have an explosive event. We'd expect the explosions to be of the same kind of order in terms of the size as the ones that we've had. So it's continuing the pattern. It's not indicating that it's accelerating or it's getting bigger or it's sort of shutting down. So we continue with this period where it's obviously going to have periodic explosions from time to time with quiet periods in between.
Yes. Richie, the question of the creation of a dome.
Yeah.
You said that the volcano is trying to create a dome. But at the same time, there seem to be forces, if even over a prolonged period, relatively speaking to what we have had before, are at work, which is taking off the cap, so to speak, taking off the little dome which is being built.
Yeah.
Is this apparent contradictory process, building a dome and getting rid of the dome, at least the initial formation of the dome, is that part and parcel of what Soufriere or other volcanoes that's the process they're involved in, and in that sense, it's not unusual?
Right. I mean, in a general sense, yes, in the sense that the building of a dome or the destruction of a dome, and in fact, volcanoes generally, what drives them, as we've said before, is the amount of gas, or geologists scientists call it volatiles, or that are in the magma, and the extent to which it can get rid of it easily. So the gas that comes out, if the magma is able to degas and the gas comes out freely, the chances of it building up pressure, which then causes it to explode, is decreased. So when it builds a dome, it means that, to a large extent, it means that either it has gotten rid of a lot of its gas freely, and therefore it's not exploding, so it's coming out. And it gets rid of its gas, and if it gets rid of its gas, it moves a little bit slower, and it comes out and it oozes out and builds a mass of rock. In our case, it builds a dome. In other places, it might comes out as a lava flow. Right, so getting rid of the gas is fine, but the dome shows you that it's getting rid of the gas, and it's the gas in fairly quote unquote quietly. Now, what the dome does, especially in our volcano, because we've seen that from how it's operated currently, is that our volcano seems to be very very much sealed. It's because of its structure, it doesn't let gas out easily. And the only way that the gas is coming out is really through the vent, through the place where the magma is coming out. So if you then stop that, if you build a dome, which is in a sense is a good thing because it's not exploding, but also if you build a dome, what you do is that you cap it because the gas is not coming out other than where the dome is coming out. So if you put a hard mass of rock at the top of that, it means that you're going to stop the gas from coming out easily. And remember I said that the best thing is for the gas to come out and to come out freely. There is then the potential for it to pressurize the material, pressurize the magnet that's down below still, that's gas rich. And then is when you could have explosion. So that's what we think kind of, as you said, the contradictory process that's happening is what is happening currently, where it builds some sort of cap or dome or some hard sealed top that then allows it to pressurize a little bit, and the pressure builds up and it destroys itself. It destroys that dome and the process probably starts back again. And we think that's probably what's been happening. We can't know for sure because we haven't seen that, but the seismic signals suggest that, and our interpretation of the seismic signals fits the kind of working model of what we have. But that said, so what we're going to be looking at to a large extent is whether or not the magma that is still there, whether it has enough gas to in fact pressurize. And there would, if no new influx comes in, we think that there would come a time where that would happen. In other words, where even if it caps itself, and even if that means that it builds up some pressure, that pressure would never be sufficient that it could break through that cap, at least not now, not without any new batch coming through. So if it gets to that stage where it actually does build a dome and we could see it and we could see manifestation of that dome and we know for sure it's there, the next thing we would look at is whether or not the pressure is building up for it to break that gap, and also whether or not a new batch of material comes through to give it the energy it needs to break that dome, that plug, essentially, that is on top of it. So that's the kind of process we have. And it is a process that is common at all volcanoes. Volcanoes either erupt explosively or effusively, and the presence or absence of a dome tends to have an effect on the extent to which the gas comes out, and by extension, the extent to which it's able to explode or not explode.
From the measurements that your team made of the emissions of gas, and I know that you had gone around, and you said this is the first time that you're measuring the SO2, and that I heard you say that measurement is really a proxy.
Yes.
More or less the closest you can get to understanding what is the extent of the magma or the energy really down there. Yeah. I'm talking in layman's terms because I don't know the technical terms. Have you been able to determine whether there is still the Manny Rosal would want to know, for instance, Richie, Soufriere more juice down there?
Right. So we really, essentially that we're trying to determine. And what the gas is showing, and what we're trying to do with the gas is actually do a lot of measurements, because these things naturally fluctuate. And when you go and you take the measurement, you're taking the measurement for a specific period. And we want to make sure that each time we take the measurement, we have enough that we could depend on we could have a certain amount of confidence in if there's fluctuation, right? So what the kind of thing that we'd expect, the gas, sulfur dioxide, comes out when the magma is more or less close to the surface. It tells you you have fresh magma, and that it tells you something about the amount that you may have. If you have a high flux, it suggests to you that you have a lot of magma there at the surface close by wanting to come out. It could also suggest to you that the magma is very gas rich and the gas is coming out quickly. If you have a low flux or low number when you measure it, it could tell you that either the gas is not coming out freely. So for example, there's a cap, like a dome put on, or else that there isn't very much gas rich magma down there. So if, for example, we had gone after an explosion where the vent is now open and the gas is able to come out freely, and we see that the flux is low, that might tell us that maybe there is not that much gas-rich magma. But if we went and we saw, we after, say, a dome was, well, before sort of one of the ends of the periods where we think a dome might have been built, and we see a low number, the low number might actually just tell us that it's capped itself. So the numbers tell us something about whether or not, A, there's material down there that has a lot of gas. If it has a lot of juice still, right? But it also could tell us whether or not the juice that it have is being prevented from coming out, right? So far, I don't think we have enough measurement. We've only done about 5 or 6 measurements, if so much. I think we want to have a little bit more than that before we have confidence in the numbers that much. When we started, the numbers told us it was high. They were high numbers, and they told us, yes, either you have a lot of stuff there, or else it's coming out. The gas is coming out freely. But then the numbers have gone down to being quite a little bit low, and the low. We want to now look at if the low numbers we are having is just before an explosion, which might mean that it had been capped and stopped itself from going, or if the low numbers really mean that it really doesn't have a lot. So I think we're too early in the measurements yet to say whether or not it still have plenty juice. So what we tend to do is that, I talk about this uncertainty. We as scientists, we tend to say that because we're not sure, we cannot try to err the side of caution and say, well, we don't know, so we'll have to assume that there probably is, and until we see any clear evidence otherwise, that there probably is gas-rich material along there, stuff that have plenty juice, that they probably still have plenty juice, and we ain't to the end of it yet. So far, that's what we think. That it still have enough juice down there from the stuff that came out that could cause explosions. Yes. We don't know if they still have enough juice for it to continue after it get rid of this juice. But certainly still have enough juice. We wouldn't be surprised if you have for you to have another explosion, at least another 1 or 2, before we end this current period.
Okay. Now let me ask this: the last few explosions which we have had,
yeah,
have either been of sufficient strength to put out material which would flow down the side,
yeah,
of the northwestern side as pyroclastic flows,
yeah,
or insufficient to amount to that, but to cause clearly problems at the dome itself, at the crater itself, at the mountain itself.
yeah.
Now, material has gathered there, and rains are coming, and I know you have indicated that you can have a real danger is now mud flows.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea on the mountain and the slopes of Soufriere how much ash we have there and which potentially can come down as mud flows when the rains start?
Right. So I don't have a number for you, but to answer your question simply, yes, we have a fair idea. We can make estimates based on the height of the plumes that went up, the height of the explosions, how high the explosions go, and how we can make some assumptions about how fast material is moving, and we could come up with some estimates of volume. I don't have the number, but it's something that's being worked on. So the most I would say is that there's a lot of material. It will take the problem of mud flows, at least on Soufriere, can go on for months or even years after. That's how much material you have there. Secondly, I'll tell you that we've been working closely with colleagues in the UK. One of them is actually an expert in Laha issues, and others are experts in other
Laha being the mud flow.
Mud flows, right. So,
yeah.
So we're working with people who are experts in mud flows to look at it sort of more specifically in terms of, what is possible and what kind of mechanisms, if you want to do that, what kind of things you can put into if you want to monitor it. Because you can put in sensors that will tell you, well, there's a mud flow coming along this valley or that valley and things like that. You could look at, what is the potential, how long can it go on for, how much material you have, that kind of thing. So we're hoping to have actually one of them visit Professor Jenny Barkley, in fact, from the UEA, visits on the weekend. Hopefully, if you can get here with flights and
Yes.
able to work and stuff like that. But I mean, that's just, you know, when these things come up, and your question helped me to make the point that when these things come up, we work a lot with people in the region at the Montserrat Volcano Observatory at Seismic. We have something amount of expertise there. But we have a wider circle of people that we bounce things across, and things like mudflows, ash, you know, modeling ash. You know, there are people who are running models to determine where the ash would go if you have a certain explosion, that kind of thing. That goes on all the time. But that's just my your question really was, if we know the amount, we could. I don't have the figure, but we have a fair idea how much it is. We think it's a lot, and we think that the problem of mud flows, of river coming down and having that issue is going to go on for a long time, such that when you reconstruct in those areas, you're going to have to factor in the potential of these things. And therefore, I guess when you engineer structures, it would be useful to have people who could advise you in terms of what you can do to sort of manage that issue of mud flow, which we probably have to. We have a couple of rainy seasons before we get rid of all that material.
Now, let me understand how this mud flow is.
Right.
Before the volcano erupted, before we had first the effusive eruptions and then the violent ones,
Yeah.
you have soil around the crater and on the hillsides and in the adjacent valleys. This ash goes on the soil. It has nowhere else to go. It can't. Well, it goes in the air, but it comes back down. It flows over on it.
Yeah.
Is it that when the rain comes, the rain seeps under the ash and saturates that mud, and that is the combination of that rain saturating the mud to push the mud and the weight of the ash itself, both factors contribute to giving this thing, to causing this set of material, mud and ash, to come down the hill.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's essentially what the volcano has done is put a lot of, I just call it stuff, you know, rocks, different sizes of rocks, ash of different sizes, all kinds of things. It
Yes.
just dumped it completely at the top of the mountain. So in addition, it has wiped out some of the vegetation. So all the grass and everything that was full in the soil is not buried. In fact, if you went back, one of the things as geologists we do when we go back in the field, we actually look for soil horizons, because when the volcano erupts, it buries the soil. So you can actually see distinction between one eruption and the next by looking at where the soil horizon is, the soil that is now killed. Well, the soil that is now buried by the material. So all that material, you have a lot of material now, several meters of it, several feet of it, up on the top of the hill. And when the rain falls, as you said, the rain just simply takes that material. Gully erosion you're gonna have a lot of gullies develop. You're gonna have, because it's a lot of it is largely soft material that rain is gonna dig into easily. You're going to have at the summit a lot of gullying, and it's going to, when it digs into the material, it's going to take that material and it's going to move it downhill. It's going to mobilize it, and it's going to find the valleys. And instead of now, before when you have rain falling, the rain is falling on the trees, it's falling on the grass. It don't have so much debris to take with it. So mainly what you have is water coming down through the valleys, right? But now, instead of just the water, you're going to have the rocks, you're going to have the ash, you're going to have some bits of trees that were killed. All that debris is going to come into the river. So it means that rather than just having the water, which is now moving fast because it's raining and it's heavy, you have all that stuff in it. And all that stuff, all that material has a power in it. It has the ability to push things out of the way. It's going to damage things. So it's not just like a regular sort of river in flood. It's a river in flood with all kinds of potential abrasive things and destructive things in it with the power to push it away. So that's why mud flows are so dangerous, because they have the ability, the force, and the potential to damage structures, to damage buildings. I've seen some videos recently of damage in some of the red zones where ash came into houses and you saw big blocks and things like that. That's from a mud flow. That's the kind of thing that would happen. So anybody that has any structures that are in any of the valleys on the volcano, any of those villages that have any buildings, any of the valleys, and they have a lot of valleys. The road basically going up and down, up and down. And some people, unfortunately, build either in the valley or close to the valley. A lot of them are going to get destroyed when the mudflows come down. So you're going to have that problem as an ongoing thing. So when you have your hurricane season and your rainy season, in addition to the rains and the damage from the swells and all of that, you're going to have the problem from all that material coming down. And I'm saying that there's so much material that it's not all going to be stripped off in the first year, probably going to be there the next year. So there's going to be a lot of potential for damage after the eruption is finished, after the volcano is gone back to sleep, unfortunately.
What has been happening, Richie, and we have the experience over the last 10 years, and particularly from 2010, with Thomas and the 2013 floods and so on, 2011 one and so forth, that illegal logging in the forest, where people may cut down trees to plant crops of one kind or another, including, crops which we normally would eat, I mean, from things which we'd eat, or people who cut for wood, for timber. Of course, people also who clear to plant marijuana. That what we have had happening is that the rains, when they come torrentially, and sometimes you don't know how much rain comes up in the mountain.
Right.
The rain, when it comes down torrentially, it brings those remains of trees which were cut. Sometimes they take out the roots of trees, depending on the depth. And when they bring that down in the rivers, in deluge, and this has happened very much so between Connery and way up in Fancy. Mm. And that's why, for instance, the lower bridges in Connery, Mount Young, Caratal, well, Byra too, Connery, Byra, Mount Young, the Caratal, and Basin Hole. We have had to rebuild all those bridges. Mm. And we had to make them higher because the volume of stuff which comes down, and we had to embed them more solidly in the ground, because what happened is this: when the trees come down, the trees go across the bridge because the trees can't pass. There's not enough passageway, and a lot of debris come there, and with the force of the water and the debris, they just move the bridge. Mm. Now, what you're saying here to me now, in addition to that traditional, that's recent kind of activity, climate change activity, we now have mudslides in the offing.
Yes, and in fact, what you've just described there, where you say that illegal logging, what the volcano has essentially done, it's done that in a big way. So it has stripped a lot of the forests, the lower level vegetation completely off, buried it. And the higher level ones, where the pyroclastic surge and flows have gone, have stripped the bark, and sometimes you just have the trunks remaining of the tree. So you've had a lot of natural logging going on at the summits, essentially. So you have a lot of the logs in any case. And you have added to that all the debris and all the rocks and boulders. So your problem that you've just described, in the coming years, you're going to have it much worse because of...
It's going to be magnified.
Yes, it is. So it means it's going to affect a larger area in a large way. Those bridges that you built are going to be fully tested, even as they were before. And any bridges that you build in the future on the volcano, you need to bear that in mind, at least for the short term, for the next year or two, that they're going to be inundated by this blocky material that's going to come down every time the rain comes.
So the question, therefore, the infrastructure in relation to housing, bridges, government buildings, and clearly the policy implications there for reforestation.
Yes.
We had to.
I mean, I think it means that when I would suggest that first of all, people shouldn't really build in river valleys, on the sides of river valleys. But certainly if you're on this volcano in the next couple of years, you should not be having people along the river valleys or in the river valleys, because they're going to be having a problem with mud flows whenever they have heavy rains, and the houses and the structures are going to be destroyed. So I think those are the things. So you would want to know exactly when you rebuild where the pathways of mud flows and define them, and probably have it such that you restrict any kind of development along these pathways.
Well, you know what happened? Because in fact, we are a mountainous country and people have tend to go to valleys to build.
Yeah.
And there are houses which will already be on the river banks, even close to, and sometimes not so close to. But it means that we have to strengthen the river defenses, certainly as they come down, which is a highly expensive business.
Yeah.
Because and while you do that, at the seafront, you have the erosion from the high seas because of global warming. So there are several environmental challenges awaiting us, magnifying really, requiring tons of money.
Yes.
It's.
Yes, I mean, the thing is, when volcanoes erupt, there are hazards that you have at the time of the eruption, as we are seeing now. But there are lots of lasting things that happen that we tend to forget about, and we have to factor in the equation. And mud flows are one of them.
Now, let me ask this: the mud flows tend to go to the valleys and also to the rivers.
Yeah, they're where the water goes. The waterways, the same place that you have a waterways, that's where the mud flows will go.
Yes, that's I suspected we'd have had some of that problem, but you've presented it in a very graphic way, on top of what we already have. Would we see the kind of pattern that we have in there now? Seismic activity interspersed long intervals with an eruption, and on the base of the last, you're not with a lot of energy. Is there any way in which we can predict with reasonable certainty as to how long that is going to last?
No, not well. We could give some estimates, but there'll be large margins of error. I think we can say, given, and we're about to actually have a major science meeting where we're going to discuss amongst ourselves and our collaborators overseas about what this volcano is doing and what it has done. But the way in which I've described how it's operating, this is how we think it's operating currently. And I think the key thing in that regard, in terms of how long it goes on, will be a question of whether or not a new batch of gas-rich magma comes into the system.
Yes.
We think something came in, and that's what we are seeing play out. But the key question would be whether or not a new batch comes in. And the question you're asking is, do we know if that's possible now? And therefore, because that is the thing that will determine how long it goes to a large extent.
Yes.
If a new batch comes in. If it's just this and that's it, well then I would say that, a couple of months, if so much, you sort of might be out to the woods. But if there's a new batch, then it means that we kind of going to reset the cycle, and we're going to start back over, and we have to go through that again. And we hope that's not the case.
No,
there are things that we could do to try to find that, but that's one of the things we try to find out is if we could determine if this is it or if there's a new batch. But one last thing I'd like to say though is that I think we have a monitoring system in place now that we will detect that before it happens, much more so than we did in the last time we did. So we've learned a lot about the volcano since it's done what it's done, so that next time it does certain things, I think we will see them come in a little bit earlier.
No, I see a looming problem which you highlighted about people going back into the red zone before they get an all clearance.
Yeah.
When you have longer intervals before you have an explosive eruption, and when those explosive eruptions don't have the force as the ones hitherto, including emitting a lot of ash and stones and the like, as there would be a tendency for persons to want to start to go back to clean up and even want to move back before the scientists give the all clear. Have you had in other experiences that people try to second guess the scientists and say, well, the scientists ain't telling the government to tell us to go back, but we feel all right, man, and we're going back. We you know, and sometimes it might even be encouraged by people, particularly now on social media. You know, these fellas ain't sure what is happening. The thing gone already. Some prophet or the other says one thing and the next, and people start to go back. What has been the experience, and have we had a real challenge in other countries? Have had real challenge in persuading persons not to go back until they get the all clearance.
Yeah.
And there's some places, particularly inland, where you haven't reached quite the height yet, but it's getting better and better every day. We have a number of important NGOs working on the ground. The World Central Kitchen, which we gave. We had been in touch with them and they're here, and I could talk about them. The Red Cross has been strengthened. In fact, one of the things that Prince Charles asked me about, I can't talk all the conversation that I've had with His Royal Highness because it is not proper. But he is president of the UK Red Cross, and he wanted to know about the Red Cross here. Gart is on?
Yes,
Gart?
morning, Mr. PM, and morning to listeners.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're up to date on water.
Right. I'm on the road, actually making some visits today because, as you know, I had a series of meetings with UN persons until yesterday. So
Yes.
we are actually in the field today, trying to verify all of the areas that are presently still out of water. As you mentioned, there are pockets, but we are, as you correctly mentioned, improving every day. And we hope to get our system back up, Jennings, back up to full capacity, certainly by the weekend. But we are trucking water still into areas where we have that stress situation, persons without water. So that is, you know.
Now, explain to me, explain to everybody, what, I know you got up the one down at Hermitage a little earlier than Jennings. And Jennings is a bigger system with covering a bigger area. A few days ago, you began to get water from Jennings.
Yeah.
Why is it, what are the reasons why it took much longer for the supply to get to all the various areas supplied by Jennings? We know and if you give us an idea as to all supplied by Jennings, at least give the listening public. And why is it, for instance, that places as far south as Diamond, which is covered, but they had a problem. And in places in between, elevated places like Upper Stubbs and Chapman's, while Diamond got back their water, and places in Lower Park Hill got, but up Dr. Smith didn't get, an Upper Village, and some problems at Chester Cottage, which is supplied traditionally by the system from up at Perseverance above Dixon. Now, why is it? I mean, the consumption, as the water is flowing in, too much for the flow which is coming in the water and so on and so on? What are all the reasons so that people will understand? Because you see, you have, if somebody down the bottom in Park Hill get water and those higher up don't get, there's great anxiety. There is, if people in Diamond don't get water, but just across the hill or the valley in Brighton got water, presumably Brighton got from a different system, and so on and so forth. What are the, so that people could have a better understanding and therefore have some forbearance, and they know if water trucks come in and bottled water, because that's important for the maintenance of social solidarity.
Yes. So the explanation has two parts. The first part is the engineering design. The engineering design from the Jennings system, and you mentioned that the areas supplied on the Jennings system it starts at Byra and ends at Diamond Industrial Estate in the south. So all of the villages along that coastline and on the interior are supplied by the Jennings system. However, the engineers at the time designed the system because it's a gravity-fed system and because it comes from high in the forest in Jennings. Persons cannot get water directly off the main line because the pressures would be too high. So what happens is that the main line supplies certain tanks on the interior, sub-storage tanks, that have to be filled first, and then they feed down into the villages. Right? So
how many of those tanks we have? I know we have 150,000 gallon at the top of village. There's Carapan.
Yes.
What are the others?
There's Carapan, there's New Delphi, there's Cedars, and there's Dr. Smith.
Yes.
Yes, and there's one other. So those tanks have to be fed, have to be filled before the water is fed down into the villages.
How large are those tanks? The one above Dr. Smith there is at 50,000.
50,000.
All of 50,000?
Yes, all of 50,000.
So you have 6 of them. So you have to fill 300,000 gallons.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
So they have to be filled. So the water has to go up to fill those to then come back down to supply some of the villages. Now, what we could do going into the future is to build some more flexibility into the system to allow some more direct supply from that main line rather than cater for normal circumstances. You see, so when we have an emergency, we should be able to be a little more direct and targeted on that Jennings system. But as it stands now, we have to wait until a gradual build-up of the storage tank levels, including the storage tank at Jennings, so that persons can get water. And the issue you spoke about persons close by, some receiving and some not receiving, that has to do with the pipeline distribution network and the need for us to control pressures, because there are pressure zones. Because we are not a system that pumps. We have areas of high pressure where certain villages are not on that line because of the elevation and because of the size of the village, etc. So it's really an engineering design that caters for all of that.
When you opened back Jennings, when you had opened it first, and people started to get water, and I know people would be thirsty for water and therefore almost say hungry for water, thirsty for water and therefore filling up things and so on and so forth. What the initial stage you had consumption, say, per minute?
We
number of gallons?
Yeah, we were supplying roughly 1,000 gallons a minute from the Jennings system. So, and what actually goes into the system, what the plant produces, is actually just less than that. So, under normal circumstances, the Jennings storage tank falls every day slightly, and then it has to be replenished.
How many gallons at the intake at Jennings?
We would probably pull through around 900 gallons a minute.
No, I'm talking the total storage capacity.
Oh, the storage capacity is 750,000 gallons.
So you basically on nights when there is not so much use, it fills up back.
Yes, but it doesn't fill back up. It hasn't filled back since we have reopened.
Okay.
We've been seeing incremental increases in the starting level on mornings, but we are not back to where we should be. So we are still, because, and we understand, because you as listeners would understand, a lot of persons were evacuated from those the red and orange zones, and they're now in the green zone. So the consumption in the normal consumption from Jennings, the normal demand has increased.
Okay.
So it's not operating as per usual. So we expect an additional strain on the system, which would make it take a little longer to normalize.
And then you have the systems, you interconnect them, and you divert from one to the next as the circumstances demand.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Now all of this, the persons who are listening, you have all of this in a proper digitalized information system that you don't have to check it physically, that you have your system done, that you can have a state master control and see what's happening.
Yes, we have that on the yes, and the issue at Jennings now, because we had the ashfall and so on, we have to do some maintenance on that system. But under normal conditions, we have a GIS system which has mapped all the lines, and we have a SCADA system that allows us to monitor and operate our valves and storage tanks, etc. And Mr. PM, I heard you in a discussion with Richie earlier about the mudflows.
Yes.
I think we need to sensitize the public that if we are to get significant rainfall, as Richie said, we will get mudflows at the volcano, yes. But we will also get some erosion and some smaller mudflows at some of our intakes. There's a distinct possibility that can happen. And mud into our systems is not something that we would want to have. So there may be the likelihood that we will have to shut our systems down in such an eventuality. So
in which case, the supply system, given the prospect of mud flows, the supply system is still fragile.
It's still fragile from that perspective, because we will have to shut down.
Therefore, as problematic as bulk water may be,
yes,
we may still have to have what we have. We still have to probably conserve for a little while, just in case.
Yes, we can conserve, and we can continue to fill all the tanks that are coming into the island. We can. I would like to see us gradually fill those up, and we can have countries and vessels on standby. On short notice, that they can, if we are depleted, they can come in.
Okay.
No,
that is I know in a couple of very dark days since the volcanic eruptions began on the 9th, the morning of the 9th of April. And today it's 13 days. Now, a lifesaver was the water at South Leeward, the one with the underground well.
Yes, the one at
and the one at Penniston. And then, well, Big Gut Water helped with Layu.
Correct. Yeah.
And the old spring in South Rivers helped somewhat.
Yes.
And there's an old spring also in Diamond Village. I want to ask this question in terms of future development. I know it may involve some duplication, and in normal times may not be the most efficient system. It would cause a lot of capital expenditure for these absolute emergency purposes. Is there do you think that CWSA, in addition to the work which they do, the excellent work which they have been doing in building the infrastructure, that maybe some of that could be addressed in the reconstruction phase?
Yes, well, actually, a lot of that was discussed yesterday with the UN officials.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have, we have spoken about an immediate assistance and medium to long-term assistance in that regard, in terms of finding alternative sources, in terms of building in flexibility into our system, given the frequency of us being affected by these climatic events and of course the volcano. So we have that on the agenda, and we've discussed that, and I'm sure we're going to see some fruits of our discussion.
Yes. I mean, I know you have done some flexibility because you have worked with small tanks, as you have said, in different areas, and you did in Fancy, you did in Sandy Bay, and so on and so forth.
Yes. We've increased our island-wide storage capacity from 2006 to where we are now. We've increased it from 3.6 million gallons to 5.8 million gallons.
Yes.
So we've been doing that, but we need sources. I think we need to investigate whether or not we can have more flexibility.
And one very wise man from an inland village, I wouldn't call his name, he said to me, he said, comrade, before Jennings built, I had a water tank. But after Jennings and I get in my water, I sell my tank. He said, when the Soufriere erupt, I regret that I sell my tank. Now, the message I got from him and in his reflection is that we have to try as much as possible to have individual families, even when you have good water supply system, that some system of controlled collection and storage of water, I don't know. And certainly on all public buildings, or as many public buildings as is possible in all the circumstances.
Correct. Right. That is something that we have to promote and encourage.
And to do that, we have to make sure that there are no duties on top of these tanks coming in.
Exactly.
Because it will be seen as a strategic issue.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you again and your leadership and your workers who have done tremendous work to get us back to where we are. What is the percentage you think now we're back outside of the red zone, where you think we are in terms of supply?
I would estimate 95%.
As high as that?
And that is because we still have the pockets. We still have those pockets to address, especially on the Jennings system. We are doing some balancing of the water supply in and around Kingston to get the tanks back to to level at night.
Okay.
Because as persons would know, we are in the dry season.
Okay.
And this is the lowest point of our annual cycle.
Okay.
But generally speaking, I feel we're in a lot better place than we were 5 days ago.
Okay. Thanks very much. Well, we survived the most difficult period.
Yes.
But thus far, we don't know what the future holds, but our fate will see us through.
Yes, but I think we are better prepared. I think we are a little more knowledgeable now, and we would be able to ride that out a little bit.
And though the anthem says our fate will see us through, at the same time, we have to remember the teaching in the book of James, that faith without works doesn't mean anything.
That's right. Yeah.
So we have to have works along with the faith.
That's correct.
Yes. Good. Any questions from anyone?
Well, there are comments. There's this particular comment, Prime Minister. This person saying that they know that we're going through a crisis, especially with water, and made reference to Mr. Saunders' presentation on air. Now, I'm living in Stubbs area as from the start of today mark 13 days since I've been without a drop of pipe-borne water, and I want to know if he's aware of it.
Where in Stubbs?
I can probably ask the person.
Okay, well, the person can say.
What the
But
person can do, Mr. Jane, the person can lodge that complaint at 4571445, and we'll have that matter addressed. Because
71.
Yeah, because
Go over the number.
What has happened? Sorry.
Go over the number for him.
Yeah, it's 4571445. It's our emergency number.
Okay.
Because we are taking complaints. What I wanted to, the point I wanted to make, in several of the pockets, and under normal circumstances, CWSA receives complaints of blocked meters, blocked lines, leaks leaks en route to your home, etc. So it's important that first the individuals still call. Don't assume that the problem is widespread. If you have a problem, call. We want to know because we want to address it individually as well. Because that will help us to troubleshoot where we have the problem.
Okay.
I've provided the information, Mr. Saunders, and hopefully the person will call.
Okay, good. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question?
Just congratulating CWS
Okay.
basically for
Thanks.
restoring in the midst of the crisis.
Now, just before I got I was talking about food. I get to say this. On Tuesday afternoon, I had a meeting of the National Emergency Management Council, and every week, the week before I had one, and next week I'm going to have one, because there are subcommittees and then there's the executive management system, but this one is the National Council. And we flag the major issues, at least, and I'm in the chair, and we get a lot of good work done. On this occasion, I invited also to the meeting, well, the Red Cross is part of NEMO, so they were there as of right, because they're part of the legislation, that they're a member of that council. Number of agencies, other NGO groups and Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the telecommunications companies, the electricity companies, water companies, water authority, everybody is a significant council. But I also invited all the UN agencies who came down. The UNICEF, World Food Program, the UN rep himself, all the support agencies. And I must say that the leadership of Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, I happen to know that he has a deep personal interest in this matter. Not only did he call me just over a week ago, messages have been sent, and keeps in touch with our ambassador at the UN, Rhonda King. Happy birthday, Rhonda. Today's your birthday, if you're listening to me. I asked somebody to send you flowers. I hope you get it already. We love you very much. So the UN system is mobilized. We had all of them. We had the WCK, and this WCK is not the WCK dance group in Dominica. This is the World Central Kitchen, and they're here. The World Central Kitchen, they informed me that as of Tuesday, they were supplying 4,000 meals. They're supplying meals for 4,000 persons. Or 4,000 meals, per day. They were engaged with 9 restaurants, and they were setting up a major restaurant at the major cooking facility. We allowed them, the community college allowed them to use the Hospitality Institute out at Diamond. And they tell me they can ramp up to 10,000. The Red Cross assured me, and they said they can provide food packages for up to 4,000 persons who evacuated and who are in private homes. Then, of course, social development through the state, they're providing packages on an ongoing basis to people in homes. Then you have the Seventh-day Adventists, 1,200 meals per day, starting on Sunday, just gone, in 9 shelters. Lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, of course, they're the shelters themselves, which have cooking facilities. And the government has ordered already packed food hampers, food buckets to cook. Samples, I think, have been given out or about to be given out. That a local company is involved in that. And we cost it to make sure that what the contents, that it's the contents actually, the price is less than if you just buy them off the supermarket. And plus, of course, there's this bucket and it's packed already, easy for distribution. You will see that the enterprise in which we have proceeded, I said to you, we're providing shelter. We're making sure you have the electricity, the water, the food. And I had said that while we focused in the shelters at first, because we know that people, when they went into private homes, they would have 3, 4, 5 days of being able to manage on their own, but many of them, and I think that there are more than 6,000 plus persons who are in private homes, but I'm talking about who have registered. This program is not for persons who have evacuated or who are not hosting people and who want to have food. We have to be careful not to game the system. But all of this has to be coordinated properly so that there is no duplication. And the World Food Program is going to do the devising an information system to help us to be able to track all of these things. To whom, in rather than having done paper, the NEMO had been devising an information system, but the WFP, on the basis of their experience worldwide, they have a superior system, and we have engaged them to work with us on this and to involve everybody. And I brought everybody together so that everybody will know we are on the same page. Then in addition to that, Sabota Caesar has started back through the government the love boxes, because outside of the area, in the red area, the red zone, from areas of certain areas of the orange zone, the yellow zone, and the areas outside of the urban centers in the green zone, where you have agriculture, people are producing food still. And in the case of some commodities like dasheen, we have too much of it to consume ourselves. That's why we send some in to Trinidad. And as far up as Monbentic, people like Susan, a strong woman with a farm, who got plantains. The ashes on the plantain and bruise them outside, but plantain is a tough thing. She has a market with persons in Trinidad, and she's washing them with water from the river to pack them and to send them to Barbados. But we also know that there wouldn't be a lot of market there for that and their problems. But we want to make sure that the farmers who have produce, that they don't wither on the vine or on the tree, on the root, so to speak. We want to buy like we did in the difficult period when there's some real problems arose with COVID, when things were closed, when countries closed on us. Really, we didn't close. To buy and distribute. The only problem here is that we may not be able to use the churches as we did the last time. The system has to be different in this time because NEMO is involved, and that also has to go forward so that there's no duplication. So as you see, there is a great amount of supplies of food which we have. And then in addition to those all that food, either cooked food or food in packages, the World Food Program wants to do some vouchers, food vouchers, and we also want to do some food vouchers, the government. Of course, you go to the supermarket and there'd be designated supermarkets, all of them. And the payments would be made. But you don't think if you get a voucher you can buy rum and cigarette, because those would not be involved. So I just want to say to the public that we have a system where we want to make sure that we have an organized delivery of food for persons, the shelters and elsewhere who require. I know that there are going to be dissonances here and there, but I can't get perfection. And I will not make perfection the enemy of the good. And wherever there are challenges, you inform shelters, you inform other places, you inform NEMO. There are more lines. There's a better communication system at NEMO, because we are going to be in this thing for a long haul. Now, the work of the Red Cross, WCK, these are NGOs, these are charities, hemispheric and global charities. In the case of the Red Cross, Red Crescent, that's an international charitable organization. And we have local ones who do in particular areas. People would say, well, today don't tell the shelter, don't cook, we will provide the food for the lunch or something of the sort. I want to thank the shelter managers and all the staff. And I repeat, I don't want us to have the vanity of small differences between one another in shelter management and shelter staff, and between them and people in the shelters. No. Out NEMO. When you say you call NEMO and NEMO, I want you to think about NEMO as you also, because your representatives are in NEMO. And I want you to think about how we can solve problems. Don't get involved in the complaining industry. Don't begin by saying, listen, I have a complaint with Nemo, they this, they that. Say, listen, I have a problem here. I would like some help with it. I had called before, I didn't get. Let us take a different approach. You have to help to own this process. And people in the shelters, you have to help to clean the place. You have to use the toilet facilities sensibly. We are on standby to do things. For instance, I think it was on Saturday evening, Camilo called me and said to me, well, actually he came by me, Saturday or Sunday, when he was on his way from Leeward. Said I got information that I have a problem at with the plumbing at Brighton. And while he's talking to me, I got our main logistics connected man say, listen, this is it. Within half an hour, the problem had been solved. But we have to use the facilities with great care and sensitivity. And we have to remember, these schools are going to house your children. So I want you to treat the schools with care and attention, just like you will treat your own home. I'm pleading. We are building social solidarity. I don't want this to be an occasion when you think of the government as separate from you. You are the government. This is our country. I want that to sink into us. And if this volcanic eruption gets that we own it, we possess it, not to stand in the pavilion and criticize those who are in the middle of play. Just sniping, no. Help. I'm asking for that, and let us be in this thing together. Now, there's some issues of transporting the stuff out from the shelters to different places. And when you have systems, for the systems to work well, you have to have persons who are at least uniformly involved to get the system work. And you will have some unevenness, and some people will get tired. There are some people who are working. Some of them are civil servants, but they go in there 7 days a week. They have husbands, they have wives, they have children. We have to cut them a little slack too. And we have to organize it in a way that people don't get burnt out. I know people telephone me and text me and send me emails and wanting to find out why I'm here, there, and everywhere. And and I appreciate your concern for me, but I want you to have concern also. And we are having the things in place to take account of all these sets of challenges. We are following through on a number of details. People with diabetes and hypertension, and the medical team working with them, the shelter managers more sympathetic. I just got a whole list of stuff, the data collected in relation to the shelters. I'm going through them because in them we may find things where we have to sharpen not so much our policy but our modes of implementation. We are very concerned, and we have moved some already and some still to be moved. Mothers, women, expectant mothers, women who are in late pregnancy or who have real problems in pregnancy. A woman who is 7-8 months pregnant, she's lying on a bed, a mattress on the floor. Things which we may take for granted, that we can just get up off the bed. She has to be careful how she gets up, and from that level. Normally she'd be on a bed where she comes off of it. We have to get those persons in We are trying as many as possible we can get into guest houses or even hotels, and those who are and particularly in guest houses where they may not have staff, so that the hotel is not worried that the person is not vaccinated, because the hotels want to protect their staff whom they have had vaccinated in respect of the COVID. But if you go into a guest house, we just take the test to see that you're okay, so that we don't have to isolate you somewhere. And when a pregnant woman comes, she may have a child or two, may have her husband and her or her partner. So we're working through all of those, and we're solving these problems day by day, sweet Jesus. And I'm giving you an insight into the multiplicity of things which are happening, which you may not be aware of. But believe me, as chairman of the National Emergency Management Council, as Prime Minister, all of these things weigh heavily on me, and I want them to be done even better than we are doing them. I know people are saying in themselves, well, Ralph, where's all this money coming from? Well, some of the resources we have received are some of we get NGOs doing work. We have some donations from organizations have gone to, for instance, SEDEMA. We tell people you can contribute to SEDEMA because SEDEMA is working with NEMO. All the money doesn't have to come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines for us to do our infrastructure work, certainly. Money is raised for the United Nations. We would work with them and their various agencies. I'm interested in things which are done. For instance, last Thursday, we had a meeting of CARICOM, and Prime Minister Rowley got Mr. Warner, who heads the Caribbean business group, and he was there, and he got a few minutes to speak, and he wanted to find out from me where they can send resources to. I said, well, we have our disaster fund account at the Accountant General's office. You can send that. I said, but if you do not wish to send money to the government, you can send to the Red Cross, you can send to Rotary, you can send to Lions. Just make sure that they work with NEMO, and we make sure they work with NEMO. You can send to SEDEMA. The OECS has a platform. Our offices, our missions overseas have their platforms, have their accounts and so on. What we have not done, a number of people who want to get an imprimatur from the government to put up an account, I have not given any entity outside of the government or regional organizations like SEDEMA, the OECS, and of course our missions overseas, any permission to raise money on our behalf. You have people with associations of Vincentians overseas. They raise their money. That's your business, you want to give to them. But I said there are these other platforms, so that I don't want the government to be held accountable to giving imprimatur to any agency other than the agencies of the government and the established regional agencies. So if you see somebody puts up something, says any NGO or any group say that they are authorized by the government to do this, absolutely not. And there's only one person who can give the authorization, and his name is Ralph Gonsalves. And I have not given any such authorizations. And I'm not giving because I don't want anybody, I don't want to have the decision to judge whether to send for approve one by Dion and don't they approve the one by my brother JP. You know? I don't want to do it that because there are enough places where persons can put resources. I want to come to this. I have asked people from the beginning, please, if you want to help your families, send the money to your families. We have enough stuff in the supermarkets here and in the stores for people to purchase. I say, I'm advising you not to send your individual packages because you're going to jam up the port and the customs, because we're receiving a lot of ships coming with supplies from governments and big NGOs, which you have to be clearing at the port. And I don't want too many persons at the port and too much congestion, over congestion, and the overwhelming of the port and the customs. Of course, I've said that, and some persons have said, oh, you only want money come because you want to put your hand on the money. How are you going to put my hand on the money when you send it to your family? I mean, just don't be silly now. You know, I mean, just use your brain a little bit. Then I hear it says that he says that you must send things only to Nemo. I'm not telling you to send things to Nemo. I didn't say that. Because you can, while I'm advising you not to be sending all of these packages, still, if you want to send, I remove not just the duties per usual, but include the $25 charge on your barrels or your boxes coming in. But I'm asking you, again, it is better to send the money to your family. They can buy what they want on the ground. I had a case yesterday. A lady called me, said that there's some people who get together and they pack in a barrel now, and they've bought all that they want to buy. They now find out, according to the person here, tell me that shipping the barrel going to cost $8,000. And if they can get help with that, I said the government will not help you with payment for transportation for any container. Because first of all, you may put things in the container which we don't want you to put. It doesn't make sense to pack water from the United States into containers now. The water is very heavy, it takes up a lot of space. And we can get water easily from within the nearby region. And Mountain Top is back. I remove all the duties on water coming in. I remove, so in fact, yesterday, because Ken De Silva is back up with Mountain Top, I had to give instructions to the Director General of Finance and Planning to remove the duties on the bottles which Mountain Top use and everything, so they would be on the same footing, like imported water. But when I talk, I don't have the time to talk through every little problem. But if I have a bundle of experiences dealing with disasters, and I've studied disasters in other areas. Please, don't second guess me on these things and go and talk all kind of things and try and... I don't see them because people will tell me and I just troops my teeth. I say, man, talk to me about something otherwise. But I say I'll use this program if they hear it and it would be disseminated. It is better to send the money. Clearly, a lot of people are taking my advice. And you're seeing long lines. And what we have sought to do, you notice we made available a space out at the shopping center, out at the E.T. Joshua. And we want to have as much decentralization because people are sending money and those persons who are doing that are sensible. I'm not telling you not to send your packages. But when they arrive and the port is jammed up and they don't get out as quickly as you want them to get out, don't say, I didn't tell you. And if you're in the islands and they're coming up on ships which don't have containers, why if you're in Trinidad, why are you going to put 50 packages on a vessel, 100 packages, family and so on, to send things for people? Each of those has to be cleared. And then, of course, even there's a container from America and you open it, and you have 20, 30, 40 people come in. Those are the number of people who come in on the port to clear things. Because even if you don't have to pay any duties, you still have to do the clearance. You know, I just don't know. Please listen to what I'm saying. I'm not telling you that you can't do it, you know. You do it, there will be no taxes on it. None at all, no charges. But let's cooperate now. We are in this particular period. Person said to me, well, Ralph, where the government getting all this money to do some of the things which you have been doing? Things are difficult. And I must end, I don't want to give too much information. I must, at the end of March this year, our current revenue is 4.4% down than last year. And last year up to the end of March was pretty good. We are doing better in the first 3 months here than we did in 2019 in terms of revenue. But we are about, in revenue terms, about $6.5 million down from 2020. But in terms of revenue and grants, we are just about $2.5 million down because we got some grants. So in terms of percentage-wise, we are 1.6% down when you have revenue and grants together. But current revenue alone, we are 4.4% down. But it means that I had reported before that we were $15 million down in January. We recoup the bulk of that in February, but we recouped that because we had some big sales of rich people selling rich people property in Mustique, and the alien landholding license, and the alien landholding license and the transfer tax help out. By the way, when I'd increased the alien landholding license from 6% to 7%, I was told by some in the country that it will stop persons from doing transfer of lands, rich people buying and saying. I said, well, if somebody is going to not buy because I put on 1 percentage point more on the alien landholding license fees from roughly 6 to 7%. They have a gradation system, but that's a rough number. I said, well, so be it, but it hasn't affected. And I get a little bit more revenue. So this is, so that's the money that comes in there. But fortunately, last year, remember when we had, and I always amazed when people will talk. In 2019, when we negotiated to get money last year, and we finalized the discussion, we got $40 million US dollars to borrow from the World Bank. 45 years at practically 0% interest. We decided only to spend $20 million of it last year. Although that was an election year, we put aside $20 million at the World Bank, 20 million US, in a category called catastrophic deferred drawdown option. When we declared the natural disaster after the volcanic eruption, that's all we had to do, and we get that money transferred to our account at the central bank. And you remember, I was criticized mercilessly by some for setting up the consolidated fund with a 1 percentage point on the VAT for the disasters, and the $3 US per room per night for visitors. Well, during the COVID, we have not applied that $3. We suspended it, but we collect the 1 percentage point. The money rose to about $50 million. We spent $10 million last year because of COVID. We have about $40 million in it. I had said then when I set up the fund, the contingency fund, that far from this being something to soak the poor, this is something to protect the poor, because when disasters happen, those who are most severely affected are the poor and the vulnerable. And we have money there now. We're spending some of that. Now, that money, the 54 million and the 40 million, might sound like a lot of money. And it is in an abstract sense, but when you're applying it to a humanitarian effort of the magnitude that we have here, it's not a lot of money. That's why we had to go with the UN to seek to raise more humanitarian money and what we are getting otherwise. And there are some public policies you do. Like in 2007, we joined, we are a foundation member of the CRIF, the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Fund. We pay our premiums. We haven't been getting a great deal, little, when we have some storms. Now we have this volcano. Of course, we know that the fund doesn't cover volcanoes. We don't pay the premium for volcanoes. But yet the CRIF, seeing the situation we are in, they make us an ex gratia payment of 2.2 million US dollars or 6 million EC dollars. Again, sensible public policies matter. that is the way we are in trying to put this thing together. It is difficult. It didn't make sense. I mince words to you. We are in a difficult situation. Having to provide food for the thousands of persons who have evacuated, both in homes, private homes, and in the shelters, and the medical services and all the other support systems is Herculean. And we ain't talking recovery yet, but we're already thinking about recovery. It's going to be challenging, but if we maintain our social solidarity and all the work which we are seeking to do, I'm giving this my best shot. And I promise the people of the country I will do my best. On the 13th of May, the 11th of May, I have to go to Parliament with a supplementary budget, supplementary appropriation bill, and supplementary estimates. We'll have to do more than one this year, but this one has to be dealing with the immediate humanitarian effort and some preliminary stuff. We are supposed to go to Parliament on the 29th, but I called the leader of the opposition 2 days ago and told him that I can't go with a normal agenda to the Parliament, but in these circumstances. And the Ministry of Finance required at least 3 weeks, so I give them 4 weeks really, head start, to, 3.5 weeks to get all the numbers together for us to approve at Cabinet and for it to go through all the processes. Because remember this, I can spend money which has been appropriated already for a specific purpose. But if I go outside of those numbers, I can only spend by executive action up to a maximum of $25 million. And that is why I need to appropriate more. In any case, I must go to Parliament and tell Parliament how much money we have, how much we intend to get, and what we intend to do with that money. And that's the story, because we are a functioning democracy and must remain so in the midst of this multifaceted challenge of enormous proportions. And as I leave, for persons who are listening, in this, our midnight hour of need, remember St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Thank you.